Call to order the regular board meeting of November 5th, 2018 at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be given by the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC. Please rise.
Color guard, attention! Carry colors. Forward, march! Post colors. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms. Ready, face. Guard, guide out.
Round of applause for the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC. The governor was in Chesterfield Township a couple days ago with a group, and the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC did a very fine job representing Anchor Bay and Chesterfield. Item 3, Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Eckevetti.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. Item 4, department reports and presentations. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, if I may, I just have one brief request. Unfortunately, this week our township lost a very bright light. Miss Tina Susko, 47 years old, township resident, who perhaps maybe there are no bigger things that she loved more than her family than this township, and particularly the Township Police Department. She was a very active member of the Friends of Chesterfield Police. Despite the fact that she was battling terminal cancer for some time, you would never know it by her disposition. She was in very, very rough shape at the time of her passing, yet she found the courage and strength to make the final Friends of Chesterfield Police meeting only a week prior. Ms. Susko's Facebook and her normal demeanor in life was very, very positive. I'd like to share with the township her last post, which said, "Don't wait for things to get better. Life will always be complicated. Learn to be happy right now, otherwise you'll run out of time." She espoused that sentiment in every way, and our township is a little more dim tonight for her as a result of her passing. If we could just have a brief moment of silence to honor her. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph. Item 5 is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda are permitted. Tonight's consent agenda include approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 15th, 2018, approval of the agenda, and approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion from the public. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Eckevetti.
Aye. Motion prevails. Item 6 is the regular agenda. 6A, approve a request by Public Works to purchase a sanitary sewer push camera from Bell Equipment Company at a total cost of $12,490. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee DeMink. Director Coddington.
Good evening, everyone. This is a camera we use all the time in different sewer situations. It is a push camera, so The majority of its time it is used on sewer leads from the house to the main. Our previous cameras, we do have two. One is approximately 22 years old. The other one's at least 15 years old. And they simply don't operate anymore. And they ran off VHS tapes, if it gives you an idea on how old it was, the previous one. So the new one is digital. We did test several of these cameras out, and we're asking the board to approve the one from Bell Equipment, the VeriSight Pro. We tested this more than one time. There are several reasons. It's very easy to use for the guys on the board. The keyboard is raised for easy typing and has a 6-hour battery life, which would better than most. The camera is self-leveling as it goes through, and several other reasons. When we demonstrated this, while this one was absolutely not the cheapest, it was the second highest by approximately $400. It will work the best for our situation, and it also comes with free delivery, and they'll bring out a team and train everybody on it too.
Thank you. Any comments from the board or the public? Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Domingue. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you.
Motion prevails. Hang tight. 6B. Oh, motion passes. 6B, approve a request by Public Works to purchase meters and meter components from Ferguson Waterworks at a total cost of $19,299.25. Do I have a motion? Motion by Trustee Domingue.
Support.
Support by Clerk Berry. Discussion, I think this comes often. This will get us to the end of the year.
This should get us to the end of the year. We tried to start doing this every couple months instead of every month, but it's basically for new meters and meter components to get us through this year and finish up all the construction projects that are open right now. It was budgeted too.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Domingue, support by Clerk Berry. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Motion
you all.
Passes. Thank you, Director. 6C, authorize the Township Supervisor and the Township Clerk to execute professional engineering service agreements as submitted by the Township Attorney. Do I have a motion? I'll make a motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Supervisor Akavetti. Treasurer LaFata.
On Friday, I received an invoice that came from AEW for contract administration for the Miller Court pump station. I went through my notes, and I spent a lot of time this afternoon going through, trying to find some documentation. But based on the emergency presentation by Mr. Coddington, we approved the project, and we approved AEW for design portion only for $21,794 and some odd cents. I cannot find anywhere where we approved AEW for contract administration for $9,100. That's one of the issues I have, and I don't know how we're going to fix the contract, because after looking at the contract, there's nothing in there that protects us from letting business without having board approval. But I see nothing where we have board approval for contract administration. The other issue I have is when we let the program, we asked for a Microsoft project timeline and management of that timeline. Every item on that timeline has expired. We had a risk of increased project costs. We're to the point right now where timing tells us, because it was an emergency and we wanted to be done before frost and everything, that project's supposed to be done 25 days from today, November the 30th. There's been no mobilization. Mobilization was supposed to be complete weeks ago. So I'm little, you know, at a point in time that I don't know if I want these contracts to go forward, because what does the township have to specify in these contracts to get the services that we requested? Because I don't see it right now. And I have a problem because there's issues that says that the contractual engineering services can get pay for delays, project delays and everything else, but at the same time, when they're asked to track it, and if there's any risk or updates, to bring them so that we can review them and understand them, it's not happening. So moving forward without adjusting this and putting an amendment in here to specifically state what we expect, I don't want to move forward on it. Thank you.
If I may, your first comment was about the Miller Court Pump Station. A total budget was approved by the board, which included the cost of the station, the design fees, the soil borings, the construction stakeout, utilities.
It was plain at the meeting that we only approved AEW for contract. The budget could be approved, but just like we approved the budget to purchase $1 million worth of meters, it still needs to come to the board for approval because it was never approved. And what I got along with that is an updated cost with no revision and no date on it, which isn't a way to manage any kind of business because you don't know where you came from and where you're going.
Yeah, that total budget was presented to the township board. Paul, I wish you'd have told me before tonight's meeting, because I
there was never an approval brought to the board to continue with contract services. And the other thing is we're not getting any contract services because it's evident in the fact that we don't have the timelines updated.
The timeline has been updated.
When did that happen? Because as of
Last week.
As of Friday, it wasn't. And we have another project also, the Weber Paddle Park, that also has another timeline that's expired. So we're not getting what we asked for, and I don't see anything in I went back today to look in the contract to see how do we specifically spell it out so that we get what we want. In other words, the township should be setting the bar for expectations in the quality of event, in the timing, and in the cost, so that we get what we want, not get what we're handed. And like I said, based on some of the issues and the recent invoice, I think we're losing control. We're not gaining it. And if we pass this contract, there's nothing in there that specifically states what we expect from the contractual services.
Mr. Supervisor?
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I would just point out, in most instances, I find myself in complete agreement with Treasurer LaFata. The nuance in this discussion, though, to say that the contract, that Mr. LaFata, the indication is that the contract doesn't provide that. I would argue that it does. Specifically on page 3 of the contract, under payment for services, there is an acknowledgement that the township agrees that periodic billings from the consultant to the township are presumed to be correct and correct, conclusive with regard to the services provided and binding on the township, unless the township within 30 calendar days. So the township does have a provision within the contract. Then again, on page 9, there are references to the contract in the contract that talk about inspections, notices, and remedies regarding work. And then item 15, that was item 14. Item 15 agrees that the parties will agree to resolve any disputes. My question is, who represents the township? So when the contract specifies the township, it has clearly been a fairly large source of contention. The difficulties with how work is bid out, how it's assigned, and Mr. Supervisor, if I could just expound a bit further, during our time on the Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Committee, Mr. LaFata and I worked very hard. Trustee Anderson was there quite frequently, and we had a very diverse group. One of the areas of big concern had to do with engineering fees. Engineering fees consistently ran for several years in the neighborhood of $500,000. Treasurer LaFata brought forward a purchasing policy, and the engineering fees, at least in the last year, were but a fraction of those fees, yet we have all this development and growth. And I think the overall concern is that we return to a past practice where there is little oversight on these issues, and again, it seems to present us as a board with a very deeply divided problem. When Treasurer LaFata points out these individual problems, they're not very thoroughly addressed, and it creates more and more frustration as time goes on. So I'm also concerned about moving forward on this contract without some clear, maybe you can enlighten us on who from the township is insuring, because at the end of the day, it is the treasurer that has the statutory responsibility and right to ensure that the residents' money is being properly spent. And if he is saying consistently that he would really need more documentation, timelines and so forth, ultimately he has the right and the obligation to withhold payment. And I'm wondering if he independently represents the township in the contract, item 2, section B, and also again on page 9 in items 14 and 15. If it is the treasurer alone who says this is not appropriate, then I don't think he's going to sign it, and I support that.
Thank you. We've been having this discussion on contract engineering specifically for a better part of 2 years. We're coming up on 2 years during this term, 2 years left with an election being tomorrow. And we're pretty much at the same spot we have been all the way along. The contract in front of you, our attorney is here at the board meeting in September. He was directed to draft this contract, and he did. With the QBS team, the contract that was existing, we all know, has been there for several decades, since the early 80s, just like many of our service contracts. The disconnect, which I don't think is going to go away in tonight's meeting, is the process and procedure for procuring and building heavy civil infrastructure projects. And one thing I can guarantee you is the way that Chesterfield is doing it, especially now with this updated contract, updated terminology, updated best practices, is the exact same method that the Michigan Department of Transportation uses, and that every single municipality in this state uses. We get caught up on unit price contract and percent complete and quantities and estimated costs and all those things. We've had many board meetings over all those things. Who makes the decision is the Board of Trustees as a whole. That's how township government is ran. It's a majority of this board elected by the folks in our township. The majority of this board make the decision on all contracts, billings, payments, and major decisions for this township. I don't think rehashing construction contracting and invoicing in percent complete is warranted here. We can just go back and watch some of the old board meetings. But speaking to the exact contract, our attorney is here and our township engineer. We will answer any further questions on that if you have them.
Just one, I think this is plowed field, there's no doubt, and there's no sense rehashing it over and over and over again. But when issues are raised, specifically on this project, the pump station project, we had a bid go out, we had engineering fees involved, we approved the budget, it came back. The electronic component, the system that runs the pump wasn't included, then it was included, then it wasn't included. So I agree with you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm comfortable with the work that our attorney has done with regard to the contract. I'm comfortable with the QBS team's recommendation. I wasn't a part of that. I respect the work that they did, and they arrived at the vendors that they arrived at. The difficulty I have is in the routine dismissal of irregularities and problems. These are not light issues, and these are not going away simply because there's an assertion that individuals are not familiar with heavy civil engineering projects. People are very familiar with a dollar amount in a box that says this is what it costs, and when that changes, that's a problem. And so as a steward and in the eyes and ears of the people that I represent, I'm going to bring that to the attention of the board. And I think Treasurer LaFatta is simply going to be in a situation where he's going to have to pull individual items on a check run during the consent agenda, and we can have those debates as they come up. Because I'm comfortable with the process, I'm comfortable with the contract. Everybody's done their job there. It's in the application and how we get what we're supposed to get and how we deal with what the contract very specifically outlines. And I will infer the township to mean part or whole of the township board. As you indicated, it is collectively the township board, but individuals, especially those statutorily responsible for signing off on these bills, when they bring areas of concern to the board's attention, I'll be listening. And I'm not going away just because somebody asserts I don't know heavy civil engineering and so forth. I know what we should get when we pay for something, when we approve something, and when that amount changes, I'll be talking.
Any further comments on the board? Trustee DeBank.
Mr. O'Connor, you're an engineer now, so you look at these things, you understand what our engineers, now we're going to have 3, or like this pump station that Mr. LaFatta has referred to. Do you go over these things when these things come in? This is your expertise in the engineering field. That's why we put you into this position. So can you elaborate how this comes when it comes to you after the job's completed, like say on regards to this pump station, please, sir?
Right, and the station was brought to the township when we awarded the contract to Body Construction, and that was the contractor cost. But on that budget sheet included the other components of building a job. You know, it's another 20-25% of permits, soil borings, construction contract administration. We had utility costs on there. There's other things besides just the low bidder who's going to bid it. And yes, I do review those. I made copies of the budget and sent it along with the invoice. We processed 2 invoices for OHM. I sent it, you know, it was authorized for a certain amount. I checked the hours against what's been done. So yeah, we do check what's been done and what's being processed, what's being requested by the engineers.
So these bills, as they come to you for jobs being completed, you review this
Yes.
along with Mr. Coddington
Yes.
to see what, and then it's forwarded to Mr. LaFatta's office through the chain for
Correct.
payment or, okay. Thank you, sir.
One quick follow-up on that, if I could. Any major construction project, and I don't mean to use the words heavy civil or take offense to any of that, but I just happen to have a decent amount of experience in this. Any major heavy civil construction project, whether it's in the private sector, public sector, which is where most of these big public works projects happen, have three entities: the owner, the consultant, and the contractor. And those 3 are partners to some extent. Now, you have contractual relationships between the owner and the engineer, and the owner and the contractor. And the 3 of them working together, because these jobs are so dynamic and have so many moving pieces and so many variables, some of which are acts of God, weather, differing site conditions. We saw one this summer that delayed some of the most high-profile construction projects in our state. The owner is the state of I-696, for example. There's a contractor on that project, and there's an engineer that is consulting that. So this situation happened. They had a work shortage. The 3 of them worked together to solve the problem and produce the biggest value. The key is our consultant engineer, or engineers, which we have 3 of them selected, 14 submitted bids, 7 gave very impressive interviews to the team. They're our partner. And you work through these problems with a lot of communication, harsh when you need to be, under the contract terms and the laws that are there. So one of the biggest disconnects are when we have a project, and we've had one construction project start in the last 2 years, and a big chunk of it is because of this divide on this board. And it's also a big chunk as to why the engineering fees have been very, very low. Now, we still have aging infrastructure, water main that needs to be replaced, sewer that needs to be maintained before it causes bigger problems. If there's a question from anyone on the board, first call should be to our township engineer. Second call should be to our consultant engineer. They're our partner. They will explain exactly what's going on with the schedule, and they're there representing us. So that for an invoice to be brought up or a question to be brought up by a schedule at a public meeting, we're not being a good owner. And a project should never, ever fail. There's a lot of reasons why projects fail. It should never fail because of a bad owner. Treasurer Lafata.
It seems like when somebody comes to the board and says that we have an emergency, and I understand pump failure is an emergency, and the request is we need to hurry up and get this on track so we can button this up before the weather prohibits it, where the weather is going to cause issues so we can't transfer the waste some other direction. I've mentioned timing both on the Weber Paddle Park and this before this meeting. The timing hasn't been addressed in either one of them since project launch. The problem is we've gone through contract mobilization was supposed to be complete on October the 12th. That date's come and gone. That means that the contractor's got his equipment, and he's ready to put his shovels in the ground and everything else. That's come and gone. That was supposed to be a 20-day period. So that hasn't been done. So if you add 20 days to the contract completion date of November the 30th, that pushes it out to sometime in December. Or somebody's going to tell me, well, mobilization doesn't really take 20 days, it only takes 2. Then I have another problem because mobilization comes at a cost that I was told is based on the number of hours it takes to move the equipment and everything. So it gets kind of convoluted, and this is no way to manage the township, the residents' tax dollars or the residents' sewer and water fees. This is not the way it's done in the private sector. A project is given a completion date. The first thing you do is you have a meeting and you look and see if there's any long lead time items and you identify those so that you know that you have to prioritize these. You don't find out a month or weeks later that we have an issue because we're trying to procure something that we didn't identify as a long lead time item. Also, we have influx of change in costs, which is a risk to the program, outside of the risk, the fact that we could have a failure because we're getting into inclement weather. So Supervisor Accavetti in the sewer and water world might do that, but in the real world, people manage products or projects, people put out timelines, they have meetings. When there's a design, when the design's complete, there's a design review with all the people all the parties that take part. The design source is there, the vendors there, the customers there. Everybody's in agreement that the design is good. They all sign off on it and take responsibility for it. It's frozen, it's released. You're tied to it. When the design changes, that raises a red flag because then the scope changes or the scope is changed. So what does that do? Does it add time to the program? Does it add cost to the program? Is there something that's going to be missed? So like I said, I don't care what the sewer and the water world does. I'm worried about what the impact is on the township and what it's going to cost the residents. And we've gone through this before, but there's 2 projects on the books right now where the timelines have gone astray, and there's been no feedback on how we're going to finish this on November the 30th that's on this timeline. So, you know, somebody else can rationalize what you do in heavy construction, but in the real world, this is not a way to manage a project. I can tell you that for a fact.
Any further comment? Let me see if anyone wants to go. The 3 of us have gone twice, and we didn't allow Trustee Vosberg, Anderson, or Claire Perry. If either of them, if any of them would like to speak, I'd like them to go first.
Everything's being covered, Mr.
Trustee
Supervisor.
Joseph, and then we'll go to the audience.
Great. I just had just the issue that I wanted to raise, Mr. Supervisor, when you talked about the breakdown of the owner, consultant, the three legs of the stool, if you will, and this idea that if there are invoice problems as the owner, we take them to the engineer in-house first and then perhaps the consultant. The difficulty I have is that we have correspondence that comes into the township, and I realize that there are 3 full-time board members, so the clerk has an obligation to run elections in the clerk's department, the treasurer, and then of course you handle the day-to-day operations. But when we come to the board, we're 1/7 of a vote. We do things collectively as 1/7. There's no extra voting. It's not 1+ because you're a full-time member. Yet what happens is when we get correspondence from vendors, from our attorney, they go typically to the 3 full-time board members. That is the practice. And even things that come from our planner consultant as the liaison to the planning commission, the planner consultant will send information to Treasurer Lafata, who has really no, other than he has to pay the bill, there is no, things like recommendations. Why would that go to the clerk and not the full board? So I'd be more than happy to take a look at invoices, and it is the information age, and we can easily distribute electronic copies. We all have iPads, and I'd be happy to bring concerns that I have with billing when we share information. But another theme is that all board members are equal, just some are maybe a little more equal than others. So if we can institute a practice of sharing correspondence from our vendors and it goes to all board members, I'd be happy to do what I can to bring my concerns to the attention of the engineer or any consultants. And the other issue with being a bad owner, I would like to quickly point out that we did have serious problems with our previous engineer consultant, at least I did. And I would like to say that under Mr. Wynn's direction as the representative from AEW, I've been really quite pleased, and I know that just as a general rule, anything that I've ever brought to Mr. Wynn is explained in the best detail possible. I just would like to see a practice that adheres to this contract that we have, and that is one or all board members that express a problem have a right to be heard and not just sort of dismissed with this idea that lacking a civil engineering degree makes you unable to determine if water is wet and snow is cold. It most certainly is, and when you see a problem and you bring it, it can't be dismissed as just not having information on engineering projects. And that's been the course over the last 2 years, and it's really been the source for me of this divide that we have. So in conclusion, we can get that information to all board members. I'll do my best to bring it before a board meeting. And if we can't resolve it, then the best possible place would be to pull it from the bill run and discuss it on a case-by-case basis.
I'll bring it up to the public. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I have a question to our council. This contract that we have before us, this is pretty standard language for this type of work?
Actually, I think this contract is probably more comprehensive than most of the consultant agreements you're going to find for communities this size. I've drafted a number of these over the years, and on this one in particular, because the board had concerns at one or more of your prior board meetings, I looked at other contracts for much larger communities than Chesterfield, and this has got at least what those contracts have in it. So this covers, in my view, the basis. It sounds to me like the issues you have are in the administration of it rather than in the language of the document. I mean, you could put all of these requirements that Mr. Lafata has raised in the work order, the purchase order, and you could put together reams of exhibits with timelines and all of that. But that, to me, would be in the implementation. That would not be something that you would provide in the four corners of the agreement.
All right, thank you. You stated it better than I did, but it sounds to me like there's two different issues going on. And one is the soundness of the contract, and it sounds like the contract language is pretty sound.
I'm satisfied with the contract. I think, some communities that I represent have water and sewer committees where they have large projects going on and they meet literally weekly, like you would a pre-planning meeting, and they sit down with the engineer and they go over the project. But again, that's in the implementation. Sure. That's out of my area.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
I'll bring it up to the public, but if any board member or member of the public, frankly, once the document becomes public, should wish to look at an invoice a little closer or request invoices, you should do exactly what I do. All those invoices don't come through my office. I don't know if they come through the clerk's office, but I do know they all go through the treasurer's office and through our finance director's office. So a simple call to either of them would get every single invoice available. Let's bring it up to the public, and I think we have someone in line.
Joe Kadich, I think what I'm sharing here is a problem that was with the past dealings with AEW. Hopefully it's in the past. Trustee Joseph, you said you're satisfied with the representation for AEW, and maybe that's worked. But I think what Ms. Paul, Treasurer LaFata is bringing up is the fact there's just nobody on the board or in the audience or works for the DPW that really follows through on this. Nobody puts a schedule together. Nobody tells everybody what's going on if there's a delay or anything. And to your point, Supervisor Accavetti, MDOT does have terminate days. If you don't hit the time you're supposed to hit in constructing that road, there's penalties. You know that. And so essentially, you don't have that in this contract. There's got to be things, Treasurer LaFata is right, there's things that should be put in this contract that make sure that if they're not doing their job, there's penalties for them. Or at least to have them an avenue to come back and say, we've got a problem because of this. That's the problem I had with this AEW. I guess if you're going to go with them, you're going to go with them. But at least put some reins in here where you have the control. They may be in consult with you and running the show, but you should have somebody in-house that's taking the reins and making sure that everything's happening the way it's supposed to happen, not late, not getting something you're supposed to have, but somebody in-house should be dealing with them. And maybe, like the attorney says, they have meetings once a week, keep a timeline going, see whether it's on schedule, whether it's behind, whether it's off schedule. I think you ought to put that in the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Maybe I will have, if Mr. O'Connor or Director Coddington do want to make any further comments, but we're confusing a couple things. What the speaker was referring to is what's called liquidated damages. If a contract goes beyond the contracted time, that would be in the contract that the owner, we would sign with the contractor, and which would be prepared by our consulting engineer, not in the contract with our consulting engineer. And as for the meetings, there is daily, weekly, or potentially hourly meetings, depending on the complexity of the job and how things are going out there in the field. And Director Coddington, this will be a project that's going to be launching here pretty quick. What's the interaction that someone from Chesterfield or you will be having and with the contractor and with the engineer during the duration of this project? Maybe you could comment to that on a little bit, and then we'll move on.
So we have had meetings with the contractor, with the utility companies. I probably should have came up at departmental reports and gave you a little bit of an update. Right now, we are at the mercy of the company that's building the station. It is a precast concrete station. I got an email today saying that it's getting very close. I don't know if we're going to be able to hold November 30th, but I'm still pushing for that. So I am worried about the weather. I am concerned, but right now the contractor's ready to go as soon as this station is ready, and we're talking about getting delivery with the contractor very soon. So it is moving forward. We are getting close.
All three of the consulting engineers that we are looking to approve contracts for are here, just for your information. Any further comments, I guess, from the public? And we'll bring it back up to the board one more time if Treasurer LaFata.
I understand what you said, Don, but when we found out that there's an issue with the build of this, precast structure for the pump station, this timeline should have been updated, that there was a timing risk, there was a cost risk. It hasn't been, and that's what I asked for. The problem is nobody addresses the risks Nobody has addressed the timeline. I mean, this is the Bible for most project managers in the private sector. If you don't have this, I don't understand, there's no open issues list that's circulated, that's made public. I don't understand how AEW manages our projects if there's nothing like this, if there's no documentation to track it. There's no open issues list tracking the project to make sure it's done in time. I mean, like I said, I think I was pretty plain on what I asked for. We tried to have some project management structure. There was nothing other than this on Friday when I started looking at this. All this has been open for a long time. The same with the Weber Paddle Park. I know there's a lot of influx and different things going on, but the Weber Paddle Park's another one. I'd be willing to bet a dime to anybody's $10 bill that in the end of the day, the Weber Paddle Park's going to cost the township more money because we're going to run into things and risks that is going to cost the township more than $114,000 that they agreed to in the mix, or in the township match, because we've done things, we've spent money on unused things. So we're not managing the projects. If we're paying somebody to manage them, all I'm trying to say is we're not getting our dollars worth, and either it's an internal problem or it's an external problem, and rationalizing it, this is what happens in the heavy construction world, doesn't fix anything. It just makes it available for the next project. Doesn't save the township any money, doesn't eliminate the township for any risk of flooding basements because we wind up in weather. But at the time that our procurement of what we needed was made available, somebody should have said, hey, we got this risk, there's a chance of pushing the program out. Mobilization, none of this was done. We passed our goals on everything, and nothing's been done to address it. So somebody's going to tell me that we can do mobilization in 2 days instead of 20, and there's a cost for mobilization that's based on hours and timing and everything else. That doesn't set so well either, because there's a price tag on something because it takes 20 days that got reduced to 2. So somebody's telling me it costs X amount of dollars because it's a process over 20 days that we can shrink to 2, and 48 hours is a hell of a lot different than 20 days. So
there is a revised estimate. I have it here. It was done last week. I'm going to give it to you right now because I didn't give you one last week, and I should have.
I want to do the best we can as we move forward to keep it to the contracts. There is a nexus between current projects and this contract, but we are just talking about this contract. Treasurer LaFata or any other member of the board, if you wish to discuss a specific project, this, whether it be the Miller Court Pump Station or the Weber Paddle Park, will be in front of this board time and time again. Every pay estimate will come here individually, and every there'll be updates along the way. But right now, I would like to finish this out by just talking about the exact contract and the relationship we're about to have with the 3 firms out there, if possible.
Excuse me, but I think, I wasn't part of the QBS board because I really wasn't wanted. But I made it very plain that all of our contractual services was supposed to produce a Microsoft timeline and manage it. And it's not happening. So moving forward, this was all part of it. How is somebody going to guarantee me that we're going to get what we specified when these people came forward and they were chosen to be our contractual services, when I have evidence right now that it's not happening? That's the question, and it is contract pertinent because that was a request that was made when we brought all these people in.
Thank you. Any further comments regarding these contracts? We have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Supervisor Accavetti, to authorize the Township Supervisor and the Township Clerk to execute professional engineering service agreements as submitted by the Township Engineer, and those agreements will be with AEW, Orchard Oats, OHM, and Spalding D. Decker. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Accavetti.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Treasurer LaFata.
No.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion prevails. Welcome aboard. 6D. Approve a request by the Facilities Director to offer a six-month cleaning contract to Aztecs Cleaning Services for the budgeted cost of $30,000. This service costs approximately $250 per day, Monday through Friday. Director Sonnenberg, who is over at the computer.
Thank you. So I just wanted to go over where we're at with our janitorial services.
I'm sorry, Director Sonnenberg. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Okay. Support. I'm sorry.
Support by Trustee Domingue.
So I apologize about the brief details that I provided with my summary. It was just an effort in time. I knew we'd have a longer discussion, so I'm here to answer any questions you might have. So,
Could you please put your microphone closer to?
I'm sorry.
Well, up.
Better pull it out, Josh, and hold it.
All right, sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
So I came on board about 17 months ago and started going through the buildings, and one of the things I noticed from the start was kind of a janitorial concern. That is the first step for health and safety in our environment. And here it's, I hate to say it, but it's skin deep. The building looks clean, but when you tear back the layers, we had a lot of concerns. And we had a sweet cleaning lady for as long as anyone can remember. She did a great job, but I feel like we were understaffed. So what I would like to see us do for the next 6 months is put together a an improved cleaning plan for 6 months. This will give us time to get the building up to where I think it should be, and then moving forward we can make adjustments. So all I'm really asking for in that package that you see is a budgetary number. Now, I feel like I'm really not even asking for additional funding, I'm reallocating dollars, if that makes sense. Since I came on board about 17 months ago, we stopped the HVAC service contract, which was about $2,500 a month. So I saved about $42,000 on that contract. I just want to reallocate those funds to what I see as a critical service for our building, which is the janitorial. So if you'll look at the slide I got here, it's just, I could give you a million pictures, but I just wanted to provide a snapshot. You come, you walk through the building, everything looks nice, but when you really get inside, you looked at the windowsills, the bathrooms, the tiles, we were missing on a whole host of work. So what we did over the last couple weeks is we interviewed some firms, and we provided the scope. Those firms priced that scope according to our specifications, and that's where we came up with the dollar amount that you'll see. Now that scope it's pretty hardcore to go through here and do everything we asked, and we provided a service at a higher level. So our old cost per hour was $13. Our new cost per hour is $25 an hour per contract employee. They're here 5 hours a night working on our scope. So you'll see here that this is just basically a rundown. We did a survey. We shot out a survey to our employees and asked what they thought about the cleaning services as they were, if they were satisfied or unsatisfied. And the majority of the people you can see at our office had a legitimate concern about the cleaning service. Now, the cleaning service also, as you know, adds to, there's a whole host of issues. When you don't clean well, you got indoor air quality concerns, and if you want to save money on cleaning, you're going to wind up spending it down the road, like we have in the past with duct cleaning and stuff like that. If you spend it up front, it's like anything. Our old office, we used to call it, instead of preventative maintenance, we used to call it preventative medicine. Because essentially what you're doing is, there's all kinds of health risks when you don't do cleaning properly. So what I'm asking the board to do tonight is, give me this budgetary amount that I feel like I've saved since I've been here. Let me reallocate it to janitorial services. And I can tell you that the money that I'm asking for, the $30,000, is just that. It's a budgetary amount. I'll come back to you in 4 months, and we're going to have a better plan moving forward. But I need to spend a higher dollar now and do a stricter scope because we're going to be doing work in the building. We're going to be peeling out some lights. We're going to be doing some firework on the fire suppression system, all of which are going to make a mess every day. So when they come in, our janitors are going to have more to do than they would. So I want to keep that cleaning at the level that we're at now and improve it. So at the end of 6 months, when we review this scope, we're at a better place moving forward. And any questions you might have, I'll gladly answer.
Trustee Anderson.
Yes. Hey, Mr. Sonberg, just a question. Now, it's quite an extensive list of what this vendor's actually going to supply as far as cleaning. And I know there's a couple of workers here that look quite industrious as we speak. What type of oversight do you anticipate for this? Are they, after a couple of weeks, are they kind of like automatic pilot, or is there going to be something
Great question.
randomly?
No, what we did, as soon as they started, we had our newest building maintenance tech, Mike Mullen, work with them every day. So Mike knows, Mike's worked with them every day to get them started. We actually have checklists that Mike's going to put out, and we're going to have them sign off on the things they've done. And honestly, daily, we kind of walk through the building and go over issues, and we give them lists of stuff that they have to do on a daily basis. That scope is going to be, we're going to watch them like hawks over the next couple weeks because it's going to be ever-changing. Every day we find new things that we need them to do, and we move them throughout the building. That's why we hired a more professional crew at a higher dollar amount. If we were to just go in here and basically set it and forget it, we could go in at a lower dollar amount on somebody that's not so flexible, more rigid, and just do, once we get to maintain, we can come down on our scope and just kind of clear things up and not have our crews be as flexible. So, I was a long answer, sorry, but yeah, every day Mike's going to go through and check their scope, and we're going to be on them. I'll give you my word that this is I kind of take pride in the cleaning part, and you will see improvements moving forward.
Thank you. For the Trustee Joseph.
Yes, sir.
The issue of accountability was in essence the question, and then you identified an individual. I'm not familiar with the individual. Where does he work?
So we just hired, so what we try to do with our crew is, forever and a day in the building and grounds crew, we only had grounds guys. Recently, we just hired, a while back, Mike Mullen, who now is just strictly related to building. He's the one who helped us out with the Sugar Bush Bridge, and he's the one I've tasked with the project here at the building. So Mike only works on building and facilities. And for the next couple months, he's going to be here. He's assigned to this building every day. We're going to be working in the server room. We're going to be working, like I said, on the fire suppression, the lighting. We have a long task list for him. And I will, because of time, I kind of wanted to provide you an update of all the facility stuff we're doing, but because of the election tonight, I kind of pushed that to the next meeting.
Just a question for you, or a comment for you, and then more specific to you, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
I'm comfortable with your presentations. I typically find them to be very thorough. What I this is take for what it's worth. When you start off the presentation where you say, I've saved this much money and I'd like to reallocate it, you were brought in to do exactly that. So we went to the public and said, we'd like to bring Mr. Sonnenberg in, and the cost of his salary and benefits will be a savings. So when you find HVAC, for example, you're doing exactly what we did to offset your salary. We can't spend that again. I think it would be good if you just came in and said, I believe that this service is necessary and this is why, and you would have had me. Mr. Supervisor, the question that I had about just from an organizational standpoint, so operationally, it's your call. I don't know Mike Muller, and I know Mr. Sonnenberg talked about he reports directly to who? Is he a building employee, so would he fall under Mr. DeMasters, or does he fall under what would be more of what I'm familiar with, at least on the county level, of facilities and operations, or Mr. Coddington's department as a grounds and maintenance type person? So where do we have Mr. Muller?
So the community development team is our planning team, and our building inspector team and code enforcement team. Our facilities and ground maintenance is facilities and ground maintenance, and that would fall under Director Sonnenberg.
Got a lot of teams there, and I know when you did the State of the Township, you had these very nice puzzle pieces, and everything sort of fit, and systemically we could see an org chart and who reported to who. So how many employees now does Mr. Sonnenberg have reporting directly to him?
I have 8 employees.
8?
Well, the majority of the work we do is, till I came on board, the majority of the work that those employees have done up until now has been strictly grounds. Historically, they cut the grass, plow the snow, handle elections, support events, and then the building aspect always fit in where it could. So that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change the mindset of those grounds guys being more building related, but we don't have the skill set, so we're working on that. That's why Mike was brought in to be strictly building related. Our biggest issue with our team is the quality related to facilities. You can have a guy go in, but for example, if you're gonna, let's say, paint a wall, you know, or touch up a wall, it's little stuff like that. You're gonna make sure the paint matches, you're gonna paint the whole wall. There's little quality things that we're working on in our group that Mike was brought in to oversee the quality moving forward.
I got a lot more questions, but none of them you've exhausted. I've exhausted the janitorial related ones, so I'll let those go for another day.
Thank you, sir.
Any further comments from the board? We'll go second to trustee Anderson. This will be your second time.
Yes, real quick. The gentleman you brought in, Mr. Mullins, I hope I don't put him on a target on his back, but I can kind of attest that he's an outstanding young man. Known him quite a while, and hopefully probably have a tremendous workforce here, but I hope his work ethic is contagious even more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board or the public? We got one from the public.
Linda Hartman. My comment is on the contract, which I read online today, and it does state what this contractor is supposed to do, restroom cleaning and building and dusting and everything. But first and foremost, you need to protect the employees and protect the public use of this building. From what I can see and from the past maintenance that we've had here at the township, these people who are going to work here are going to work here till 9 o'clock at night. They will be given the keys and they will be locking the doors and opening the doors when meetings are adjustable. There's nothing in this contract that gives you who these people are. And I'm sure that Mr. Sonnenberg probably knows them because he says he works with them, but he gets off at 4:30 and so does Mike Mullins. So these people are going to be here some nights alone, and you don't even know who they are. I think part of the contract should include names, addresses, and phone numbers of the employees that this contractor has working within this building. I think it's a safety factor. Thank you.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Maker.
Obviously, I understand, her concerns, and, that was one of ours, especially when you have somebody in the building, especially this building. So, of course, all the employees, anybody that touches this building, before they were even brought in full-time, we did extensive background checks. The HR department and Director Kirsten went through, and we've kind of checked them out the best we could, like any other full-time employee we would have in the building, before we give them access or keys.
Aztec Cleaning, I'm assuming, I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor,
No,
they're
go ahead,
licensed and
Trustee
bonded organization?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So I think that
Yes.
obviously satisfies, they come
Correct.
established.
This is not really a contract. We can get out at any time. It's just basically, it's just a service that they're providing. We narrowed it down to 2 companies. That was one of them. The other one was New Way, which they clean all the buildings in Macomb County. It's just Aztec provided more, and it was kind of an owner-operator. Same size company, both really good companies. So at any moment, we can make a lateral move. It's just they provided such good service from the start. We wanted to give them the opportunity moving forward.
Any further comments from the board? Former Treasurer Hartman, there's been a lot of changes in the last 2 years. Everything from the org chart, different skill sets for the specific needs of our community. This is a subcontractor, someone who tracks, matches, knows exactly what the condition of our facilities are in, and there will continue to be a whole lot more changes along that front. And I didn't mean that to be an attack or anything else. I'm saying
no, it sounds fine to me. I think it's a good move. I do. My concerns is protection of the building. I remember a past incident many years ago where we had employees or contractors in the building, and an incident happened. So I don't want that repeated. So that was part of it. Since you brought that up, when I looked on the contract for Aztec wasn't online, but the New Way contract was. And one thing in the New Way, and I don't know if the Aztec one is different or not, but it states that they will be paid monthly at the beginning of the month, which I know in the past the board doesn't usually like to pay in advance for services. They like to pay after they've been completed. So I don't, like I said, I'm not familiar with the Aztec contract, but
Thank you.
that's a point I just want to make.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Motion by Supervisor Akavetti, support by Trustee Demink to approve a request by the Facilities Director to offer a 6-month cleaning contract to Aztec Cleaning Services for the budgeted cost of $30,000. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. 6E, approve a request from the Facilities Director to have Conti Contractors replace one of the existing rooftop units at the police station at a cost of $12,500.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Demink. Discussion. Trustee Anderson.
Oh, no question.
Oh. Discussion from the board or any comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Demink. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. 6F, approve a request to purchase the Munectrix premium service web-based software yearly subscription at a cost equal to $2,995, license fee $5,995, minus a $3,000 reimbursement fee from the state of Michigan, and have the township supervisor execute the Munectrix subscription agreement. That is a tongue twister, and I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Second.
Discussion.
Just a quick question, Mr. Supervisor. Munitrex is premium service web-based. It offers a lot of data. How is the Munitrex subscription, the information contained there, different than what's available to us through SEMCOG? SEMCOG University has a very extensive database, and in a lot of the data that was provided in our packet, they cite SEMCOG data as a reference point. So again, I know in my time, and perhaps Commissioner Trustee Vosberg could speak to the very wide scope of data that SEMCOG offers. And to me, this, although not a major expense, certainly seems to be a duplication of that, and I'm wondering why we haven't accessed SEMCOG University.
And HR Director Duchesne is coming up. We'll be able to speak a little bit more on this. If you go to the SEMCOG site, you will see the Chesterfield Township data along with all the other data. That information comes from the public information submitted to the state of Michigan. On that same page, there is maybe a half a dozen or a dozen icons that will require a whole bunch more information. Their dashboards, their comparisons, budget builders, debt managers, checkbooks, capital improvement plans. So there's way more tools and information that we can input to give us better information to make better decisions moving forward. And Director Duchesne is here, and he could probably expand on this quite a bit. It's been a never-ending, reoccurring theme of mine to have better budgets, to not have the next individual sitting in this chair walk into what I walked into. And this information and this tool seemed invaluable for any local municipal board, and emphasized by the fact that the state of Michigan is encouraging it so much they're offering to pay for 50% of it. Director Duchesne, if you'd like to expand, and then I'll bring it back up to the board.
Thank you, Supervisor Acovetti, members of the board. The Munetrix tool has been under development for a number of years, starting with inception to try to give municipalities a common platform for data analysis, future forecasting. Over 25 or 30 years ago, really began nationally to look at performance benchmarking and data management for understanding our cities, counties, villages, and townships. What Munetrix has done, being based in Auburn Hills, is tried to integrate the number of documents and sources of information like what's known as the F-65, which is the annual report provided by finance departments from the audit to the state of Michigan and state treasury. The data here that you see, we provided an administrative review report, which is data manipulation and use of data that you only can do through a subscription service. Now, if you go to the SEMCOG site, you'll find, obviously, I use SEMCOG a great deal for projections and data and sources. And what is also on there, because they have an agreement with Munetrix, is a limited use version of your data. They do provide that you can go on, you can look and view, but what you can't do is actually manage the data, use it as an analytical tool to any extent. For example, the citizens can look there and see how an organization is scored on its fiscal concerns. There is a score, and some years ago, we were in and out, to save you the long geek version of it. There was a scoring system put in place on municipalities facing fiscal challenges, and that has been integrated into Munetrix so people can see that, it's visible, and it's rated on a system with 0 having any financial problems and difficulties as projected versus up to a score of 6 or 7, which some of our communities that were in fiscal distress a few years ago under state emergency management would have showed. So this tool, by subscribing, and as was mentioned, the state of Michigan has encouraged through a number of task force and work for municipalities to do more than simply adopt an annual budget. In fact, we encourage, and good professional practices is to adopt a budget as part of a strategic plan with fiscal management policies and be able to do a 5-year projection. 3 to 5 years would be a standard. You would be able to see in your funds what the trends analysis are, inputs such as property values and data expenditure trends, and you would be logically, while you're doing your budget, be able to project and ask the what if questions. What if we change something such as values? What if we change an expenditure? What if we change personnel? Any variety of things. The other thing that the tool brings is a capital planning and analysis part of this. Now again, if you have a large municipality with good resources, you can have a number of people doing all of this data, but what you can't do is compare it to somebody else. You can do it by extracting data from one part, and you can call around, you can exchange data electronically, but this tool allows you to do 2 things that are very critical. You can compare and contrast your operation to that of any ones that you select or you pick. The picking tool is very important when we do things like comparable studies or understand in what position each organization is. One of the key elements is looking at per capita data. And as you'll see in the administrative review for the township that we did as an example and a temporary access to this tool, it actually shows how Chesterfield would settle with our comparables that we are using in some cases in labor discussions. So you can do and compare and contrast that. It also shows shared services, and it shows overlapping governments like the multiple school districts. It also will provide a report that we do. That's it's commonly called the revenue sharing report that finance has to produce every year and send to the state of Michigan. This function, using this tool, will produce that report very promptly with no really extra data manipulation being necessary going forward, so you'll have that. And as was said, it's thought of enough that you can actually get a grant for half of it at a reduced price that we've negotiated to $59.95. So from staffing and looking at community resources, this is the first element in what certainly I would recommend that the board take upon to develop a strategic management plan for the township and its fiscal resources. But overall, it's operational resources. Because just earlier in the last item, there was discussion about how we're structured. Well, Administrative Order Number 2 states how the departments are structured, and for example, Township Operation and Facilities Management is in Order Number 2. Mr. Sonnenberg reports to the supervisor, and the people that work for him are structured so that everyone can see that. That's a basic tool that we then have to take and compare to somebody else to get true individual costs. Cost units can't be done if you don't have a common comparative base. In talking to State Treasury, one of the big problems they have, and the reason basically they take our audits and toss them in a pile, is because everybody does something different. There's a little nuance here. You follow the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act. You also put in an annual audit with your auditors, but what you may put in one category is not necessarily what another township puts in that category. So this tool allows you to generate some pro formas or examples of how workflow goes here and compare and contrast that to others that you select. And you can also, it's a very interactive device. If we turned it on here today, we could bring up a graph. You could subtract and add different data. You could do it and manipulate this data while you're sitting here to do your forecasting and your planning.
Thank you, Director Duchesne. Treasurer LaFata?
I had some discussion at our department head meeting today. Nobody loves data more than I do. The problem I have is we get data on 1 month, we get data the next month, we can look at trends, we can see that we don't perform as well as another township, or there needs to be something done to correct the data so that it winds up going in a positive trend rather than a negative trend. Data, this Munex program and the data, without a commitment from the board that we're going to use this to make changes so that we become a better township, is in fact a waste of money. To collect data and not use it, not get a commitment from the board before it's approved that we're going to go through and make changes based on data is really a waste of money. I've seen this before. To collect data, which is historic, compare it with other townships or other companies or best practices, and not do anything with it is a total waste of money. So somebody's got to manage it. Who's responsible? How do we get the changes out? And is the board going to be committed, if they approve this, to go through and support the changes necessary to improve the township? Because if you're not going to go through and make the changes necessary for improvement, there's no sense in having this data package.
Any further comments on the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just to echo Mr. LaFata's comments with regard to data. We've got a lot of data in the township. We've got a lot of actionable data. Months ago, we got data about a fire station. We're paralysis by analysis. We have data sounds really great. A lot of very fancy charts. Nobody likes data more than me, with the exception of maybe Mr. LaFata. He actually reads all of these charts like, this is what he does. And he's absolutely right. We have a presentation by our HR director that sounds like a presentation that should come from the deputy supervisor or the supervisor. I think this is wholly outside of your scope. And again, I'm an advocate of data, and I realize maybe 10% of your presentation focused on how you can set comparables for contract negotiation, but the rest was all about the executive branch of this board. And for 2 years, I've supported everything that's come down the way to make the chief operating officer's job easier, whether it be staff, tools, and what we have are a series of unfinished projects and a lot of data. I can go into his office and I can see charts all over the place. Nothing actionable, not enough actionable, and I hope that I don't spend the next 2 years, arguing over a few $1,000 expenditure, but we have paralysis. We're just at a dead stop, and it's frustrating, and I may or may not be a great tool, but I know that we have enough data in the pipeline now to execute decisions that are really self-evident. Anybody in the township can say, hey, what's the story on that fire station? What's the story on this? that's data that's readily available that has received no action. So bringing more data into the equation isn't our problem. It's what do we do with it? And again, I appreciate you're a very accomplished guy, but you're presenting something that looks more like a supervisor or a deputy supervisor, and I think that it's time to stop all of the infrastructure improvements, and I think I'd like to see our supervisor actually act on the data we have before we purchase more data sets.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you for bringing this forward. I have a question just on how it is used. Presentation said that members of the public can access information, but yet there's a list of authorized users in this in the data here, or I'm sorry, in the agenda. How does the public access, and what's the difference between an authorized user and
the information will be an icon on our website, and the 4 users can enter the data and update the data.
Oh, so this is more who can put data into it.
Is that correct, Eric?
That is correct. The names that are listed there would actually be able to enter and modify data, whereas the public, when it goes up for a transparent tool, they may do a number of things with it and extract the data from it, see where the ranking is, graph or bar chart it, but they won't be able to change the base data.
Okay, but because I see there's only, 5 or 6 people listed here, and there's probably many employees who will want to have access to that to be able to prepare reports or recommendations or whatever. Thank you for answering that question.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? We can see this isn't necessarily about the issue at hand. It's about maybe an individual, myself. This is a tool that is well overdue for our township. Obviously, there's some personality conflicts here as to the direction the township is going, and I really look forward to the 2020 to be able to showcase the 4 years from 2012 to 2016 compared to the 4 years from 16 to 20. But this tool is one that will make sure that the next supervisor doesn't walk into the culture and the financial distress that this supervisor walked into. The board ultimately will act, the information being transparent and accessible and obvious, because you can compare one community to another, will ensure that we don't have $3.5 million transfers from general fund to the police department. We'll ensure that we don't have contracts approved by the prior board that put us at double the average cost for medical insurance without a better actual product. It's a best practice, and it's really amazing to me, and it just shows how hard it is to change a culture. That's something this easy and good and encouraged by the state of Michigan. It'll actually make submitting our revenue sharing supplemental payments easier. You may actually see something like this, and those best practice communities get additional revenue sharing dollars. So the culture of not maintaining facilities, the culture of not maintaining assets and not disposing of ones that no longer need to be done, like the DPW building, and really taking a hard look at the building on Jefferson as to if it's in the right place. You can see how the culture is so hard to change, because look what you get. Motion by Supervisor Akavetti, support by Clerk Berry. Please call the roll.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
No.
Motion prevails.
Yes.
Item 7, there are no addendum. Item 8, public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Remarking on the phasing of the contract to everybody, I take it from your observations, Supervisor Echeverry, that it's up to the supplier or whoever, AEW, whoever it is, to write in the timing, to write in the penalties, when the expenditures are supposed to go, provide a timing chart. That's going to be up to whoever gets the contract to do this, whatever operations you need done? Or is it going to be as it should be? If you're not putting it into the contract, shouldn't your purchase orders or your release to your contractor include that whenever they design this project, it's to include timing, it's to include penalties, it's to include everything that Treasurer LaFata brought up? I wish you'd make that clear, because right now it sounds like nobody's still standing up to that. It's not in the contract, so nobody's obligated to do it, and doesn't seem to be any reason why you should just put out group contracts. The second thing I'd like to talk about, I heard with the election tomorrow that during the previous elections that one of the schools ran out of ballots, and that people, as they came in, not knowing when the ballots would be arrived, people were leaving without voting. I'd like Clerk Barry to address that and tell me, has anything been put in place so that that doesn't happen and people go away not voting? If you'd bring that out, please. Last thing, you all got my email showing you pictures of the swans eating the Phragmites, and I didn't send that out just to rub your noses in it, but to give you some thought. When you voted to spray the glyphosate, there's consequences. Now that those things are dead, some of them are coming out. The swans are eating the weeds, basically with the glyphosate in it. And like anything else, you know, swans go downstream. And you're part of SEMCOG, which I understand is where you're getting a good amount of your funds to do the spraying for here, whatever is going to happen with Fish Creek, plus all the other communities involved. There's going to be a lot of that stuff floating downstream. It's eventually going to get into our water. We've got enough stuff going into the water right now. Your Detroit water system, or Great Lakes, whatever you want to call it, they do not have any way of testing how much or if any of that is in the water when they filter it. And if they did test it and found it, there's no way that they could get it out. Basically, all they treat for is bacteria right now. And so when this stuff comes to light, it's going to be well down the road. People are going to be basically complaining, and it's happening on your watch. Instead of promoting this, I would think as a part of SEMCOG, you take up the idea that you want to help protect the public, and you go back to SEMCOG, look at everything that's behind the problem with glyphosate or Roundup, and try and get SEMCOG to go in a different direction. In other words, mechanical. If they're going to do this, do it mechanically, not spray it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Yes, Mike Wharton from 50393 Bauer. I have 3 things I'd like to say. So 11 weeks ago, I made the pledge that I would help out the fire department any way I could. And as of today, I have graduated from the Macomb Community College Fire Academy with a certification in Firefighter 1 and 2. And I will be applying for a part-time position with the Chesterfield Township Fire Department. The other 2 things I'd like to mention are the 11th upcoming is going to not only be Veterans Day, but also be the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day. And I would hope that the township would like to recognize that important historical event and how much of the world is kind of in response to the last century. And then lastly, I know tensions are high, but let's get through tomorrow. I don't know about all of you guys, but I'm done with ad season, and let's all hope that tomorrow goes well. I know polling places are going to be packed, but hopefully everyone has a safe time tomorrow, and just remember not to get angry at everyone. And everyone have a good day tomorrow. Hopefully it's all good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Any further comments from the public? Bring it up to the board. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I'll keep it short because I know you want to get us out of here to set up for elections in the morning. Keep hearing remarks about changing culture and whatever the vision there is. And I just want to talk about some of the culture that has. One item specifically, we had issues trying to fund our police department, our public safety, and thanks to the benefit of a couple members of this board that says something in action, we've avoided that issue. We've got that at bay. So there are other ways besides talking about changing the culture that that can have positive effects for our township. Besides expanding the local government, that seems to be a pretty big thing around here, and I always thought that was kind of against Republican principles, growing government. We always blame the other side for doing that. I think something's amiss there. Expenditures. A great document come through here. The last item we had on our agenda, this only cost the township, what, $3,000? Couldn't that money be used elsewhere? Couldn't those statistics, whoever wants to see them or use them, go to SEMCOG, go to Google? I mean, we just had finishing up contracts with the various unions here. I'm sure that somebody had to go look elsewhere and find comparables. I don't know why we have to start buying another. I keep thinking of sewer and water study, tremendous manual sitting on a shelf somewhere. How much did that cost? Make sure you vote tomorrow. By the time you see this on Channel 60, the vote will be over. So let's just stay warm and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to point out Mr. Kadich is, spot on it as he typically is. The only good thing I can tell you is that the use of the pesticide, as we approved narrowly, was sort of in fulfillment of a contract. I got the impression that future eradication of this invasive species will hopefully follow a more eco-friendly and not, a Monsanto derivative, solution. So I'm hopeful there. Staff Sergeant Gordon, congratulations on your graduation from the Fire Academy, and you certainly fulfilled your statement. You came forward in a very contentious meeting and said, I'd like to be of use if I can help my township. You didn't just go away, you went and actually did something, and it's quite impressive. So I'm hopeful that your application is well received, and I think it will be. To Supervisor Acaveti's comments, and then Mr. Anderson's response. We point out differences, and then you're linked into a culture. It's a dog whistle, and it really is meant to imply that you're part of a regressive idea. When the reality is, what we do up here, unfortunately, when all is said and done, more is said than done. We talk like politicians, and you hear things about reinventing futures and problems being dynamic and so complicated and so critical that nobody could understand them, except perhaps the supervisor. And as Trustee Anderson points out, we've spent the better part of 2 years providing the supervisor with every tool necessary to make changes and make us a township of the future. But it's not simply growing government and purchasing tools. You have to take action. You have to be willing to look somebody in the eye and say, this is what I'm going to do, and not all options are on the table in perpetuity. When all options are on the table in perpetuity, no options are going to be executed until somebody bold or somebody with vision comes forward and says, this is the path we would like to go down. That's how we got the Public Safety Department. It was an initiative that was brought by a handful of board members that forced the vote. And I fear that anything truly meaningful to this board, to this township, will have to come that way. And when you approach and you ask for some direction, how about just a very simple timeline on Fire Station 2? All options are on the table. That's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. We need to be held accountable, and I'll tell you now, I'm not running for supervisor in 2020. I'm not a politician. I'm at the exact service level that I can commit. I have a daytime job that I absolutely love. It is my calling and my passion. My time here is really service to my community, and I enjoy it. I don't speak like a politician. I don't respond to questions that are very hard and direct from somebody right in the eye and tell them about reinventing the future. Just don't talk that way. It is not, it's not what I signed up to do. And I recognize that, thank God the whole world isn't like me, but, there are individuals that are much more analytic and deliberate, and I think there's definitely a place for that. But what we have is just constant delay and a lack of action. And what we've seen, as Trustee Anderson points out, is Mr. Sonnenberg's a great example, very qualified guy. He came in, we talked about what he could do to the township when we look at our assets and do an asset management plan and see how it is that we're spending those. And what I find out tonight, not only does he not just report to the supervisor, but he has a staff of 8. We brought in an HR director who now functions more as a deputy supervisor, and that HR director didn't exist under the previous board. It was time, and I think anybody from the previous board would probably agree, it was time. A municipality our size needs an HR director. But the previous HR director that didn't make it a year indicated that he also needed an assistant. That person was brought over as a part-time person and now has been promoted to a full-time person. So the constant growth of government is exactly what Trustee Anderson says. It's not what we signed up to do. And as much as I disagreed with members of the previous board, the one thing I can't take away from them is the fact that we operated under a much different economy. Every year that the economy comes back and property values go up, there's more money with which to operate. That doesn't make you an effective leader. That just gives you more resources than the previous board had. You can't take credit for things that you had nothing to do with. And every time these criticisms or constructive criticisms are brought, you hear things about legacy boards and cultures of that somehow the person who's the ambassador of the new way is the only right way. Simply not true. I will commit to do everything possible to look for collaborative opportunities, even though I'm very, very frustrated. I appreciate Clerk Berry. This week we had the opportunity to sit down and really just talk in a very blunt and candid way. What is it that you would like to see done in this township in the next 2 years? And I appreciated that meeting very much. There are some things that I have gone a bit afoul on. There are day-to-day things that cause me to get very, very upset, and they're misplaced. I can't do anything about them. So rather than argue and everything is an outrage, I think when that happens, then nothing is outrageous. And so I do take you up on something even Staff Sergeant Gordon asked us about at the beginning of the year last year. He said, what were your objectives for the new year? I said, I'd like to lose some weight. I put a number at 50 pounds. I'd like to get 50 pounds off in 2018. And I think my attention to all the other things is the reason that I'm 55 pounds short of my goal. It's got to end, and I will focus on the things that are most important, the areas that I think I can do the most impact, and I'll try to limit the scope of my involvement to those things. In closing, I'd just like to bring everyone's attention, who I know most of you are aware because you've had service members in your family or maybe have served yourselves. I happen to serve on this board, and it really is a great honor to serve with individuals who have served this country. In talking, as I frequently do, with Treasurer Lafata, we talk several times a week. Sometimes it's just about our families, and sometimes it's just about life and not anything political. A few weeks ago, Treasurer Lafata made me aware that it was the 50th anniversary, October 28th, October 27th was the 50th anniversary of a declaration involving Treasurer Lafata being reported to his superiors and family that he was killed in action in Vietnam. Treasurer Lafata found himself on the point, and an explosive device was detonated in his proximity, and individuals behind him never came home. He narrowly escaped death, and he's not one to tell stories just for war stories, but it speaks to what he's seen, what he's dealt with in his life, in his military career, and also in the private sector. And when a man like that comes into the township who offers more to us than we to him, it's incumbent upon those to work collaboratively with him, and what's happened is he's been shut out. And it's a shame, because Mr. Lafata has taken over big companies with budgets many times over the size of this township, and he knows how to put a corrective action plan into place, but he talks in a very direct way. Accountability is not a word that he's afraid of. He will take on the responsibility. If it's to fix the door lock that goes into his office after several attempts and he feels he can do it, he'll do it. He takes action. Doesn't make excuses, he doesn't explain, and he doesn't complain. He's been here for 2 years, and he pledged to do everything in his power to bring this township forward. He's been isolated and ostracized. It really does make my heart hurt to see the squandered opportunity that we have here. Another brave person that I'm very proud to serve with, and now we're going on 6 years, is the man to my right. Trustee Anderson left the Detroit Police Department and became an administrator here in Anchor Bay, but he was also an Army reservist. And his assignment during the Vietnam War was the war in Detroit. And when the National Guard is called in and you're a uniformed officer carrying a gun for the benefit of your people, you're obligated to take action when things present themselves. And so we have on our board some very accomplished veterans, and I'd like you to keep them in mind, as long with the other servicemen and women in our great country, people of action, people who take action, and they speak very plain in a very self-evident way, and they don't tell you about dynamic reinventions of futures. They just tell you exactly what they're going to do. They hold true to it, and I'm proud to say that we have those members on our board, and I'll continue to work collaboratively with them and anybody else that is interested in big ideas for this township.
Trustee Dumank.
A couple things real quick tonight. The library board is having a meeting this Thursday, the 8th. The library is looking at purchasing a piece of property to maybe sometime in the future build a new library. That piece of property is located along 21 Mile Road between Sugarbush and Anchor. It was owned by the county. They've got an offer in. We had a public hearing last week. The library board, which is a total separate entity of this township, will be making their decision on whether to purchase that property this Thursday. I'd also like to welcome our 3 new engineers, members of AEW, members of Spalding, DeDecker, and OHM. I'm looking forward to working with the 3 firms that I interviewed a couple months ago, so we're moving the township forward. And last but not least, myself being in law enforcement for over 40 years, I'd like to offer my condolences to all my brothers and sisters at St. Clair Shores PD. One of their canine acts was killed last night in an instance. The person who did shoot the dog was also killed by police officers. It's not all what's outright, but my condolences to my brothers and sisters at St. Clair Shores PD. And thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I'd like to extend a welcome to the, I see we have a Cub Scout in the audience from rank of Webelos, probably here working on it, working on a badge. So welcome. I hope you learned something from our deliberation this evening. And then I would like to address an issue from regarding SEMCOG. When it comes to the spraying of the Fragmite in the weeds and stuff, it's the EPA and DEQ, those types of organizations that are actually making the recommendations. SEMCOG is just a facilitator of the various municipalities that participate in the waterway cleanup. And I also would like to thank all of the people who have served and who are serving, and especially recognize the people who have served in the military. And thank you very much for your service, including Mr. LaFata. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
There's 3 words: responsibility, accountability, and commitment to the township residents. Trustee Joseph asked about the Jefferson Fire Station. I got a copy of the 3 options that were put out to get an estimate on what they would cost the township. I think there needs to be a little bit more research done because maybe there's a 4th option. And I will make the commitment to bring a plan to the board of what should be done and the process to take care of the issues with that station and how it's going to be utilized in the future. I like to thank Mr. Joseph, but normally I try not to, my past is my past. My future, my previous employers used to say, don't tell me what you did yesterday, tell me what you can do for me today. What I can do for the township today is try to bring more control to what's happening. More control only brings better understanding for everything that's going on. I look forward to working with our contractual engineers, but when I don't get what I want and what I expect and what we requested when we put this out for bid, I'll have a nice form letter so that when I get an invoice, first thing you're going to get is a form letter saying, please, let's come in, review the work product, and I need to understand why I'm getting an invoice for something that I don't see has happened yet. Thank you.
Claire Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Polls are open tomorrow from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. If you're still holding on to an absentee ballot, you've got a couple of options. One, you can drop that ballot off here at the township offices up until 8 o'clock tomorrow night. You may also go into your precinct polling location, surrender that ballot, and be issued a regular ballot and vote in your precinct. Those are your options for that. With regards to our ballots, we have 2 types of ballots available to you in the polling location. We have an express vote ballot that can be utilized on our automatic marking machines, and we also have traditional pre-printed ballots. So there is an option. The situation that we encountered in the August primary is that we had only one type of ballot still available for about 10 or 12 minutes at the end of the night. While we were in process of bringing additional traditional ballots into the precinct, we had certain individuals who did not want to use the other ballot style. We cannot force them to do that. The ballot, so there was always a way for individuals to vote. There was always a ballot available. We just had some individuals who did not want to use that ballot style, and they did not want to wait I think it was 12 or 13 minutes for the traditional ballots to arrive. So unfortunately, we can't force people to use those, but we never ran out of ballots. There was never an opportunity for people, or there was never a situation where someone could not vote. They simply did not want to vote in the manner that was available to them, and we cannot force people to do that. So there are 2 opportunities or 2 options for voting tomorrow as well. Those 2 options are still available. I do encourage you to utilize or try the express vote system. That is the automatic marking system. That means that you don't have to color in ovals anymore. You simply make your selections on a touch screen, and then that machine will automatically mark a ballot for you. It allows for a number of capabilities that your traditional ballot does not. It will allow you to go back and forward throughout the ballot until it is printed. You can make changes without spoiling the ballot. It will not allow you to overvote a ballot, so you don't have to worry about spoilage. It takes a lot of human error out of it. You won't have a situation where the ovals are not dark enough and you have to return to the voting booth, darken your ovals, and then resubmit your ballot to the tabulator. The automatic marking system will mark them automatically for you and dark enough so that you do not have, actually there is no oval marking, in fact, it's all done by a barcode. So the system, that is a system that gives voters a lot more capabilities than a traditional ballot. However, both will be available to you, but we encourage you to try the express, it's called an express vote. And when you go to the polls tomorrow, ask for an express vote ballot if you'd like to utilize that option. That is also the option available to our voters who need assistance, who have either physical or cognitive limitations. So, we have made some changes to the polling locations tomorrow that I think will make the experience better for our voters, and we expect a higher turnout tomorrow than we have in past gubernatorial elections, but we do expect a lower turnout than we see in presidential generals. So you may get to I encourage you to get to the polls early. They are open 7 a.m., will remain open until 8 p.m. All results will be available on the Macomb County Clerk's website. They do not even come to the township anymore directly. They are sent directly from the polling locations to the county clerk's system.
Thank you. It's been open season on me for Trustee Joseph for about a year. Treasurer LaFata a little bit beyond that, and tonight who joined in was Trustee Anderson. A politician, I think, is exactly what you are, Trustee Joseph. The mistruth, the half-truths, the misinformation, and frankly, a lot of times the outright lies. I've tried as hard as I can to stay above this, but it's very clear that halfway through our term here that this is going to be a reoccurring theme. I do believe we have a culture problem that needs to be changed. It was very evident when 3 days before I took office, the former supervisor was arrested. Now, what led to that level of corruption in our community? The culture is exactly what led to that. And the culture is lack of clear processes and procedures, lack of clear vision and direction and pinpoint focus on what we're here to provide as a government. The misinformation about being left off to the side and the half-truths, picking bits and pieces of information to try to make me look bad, because the exact culture I'm trying to change is what the 2012 through 2016 board that yourself and Supervisor Lovelock were leaders of.
Careful.
Were behind. So I've sat here for a year and listened to shots at my leadership and listened to shots at the decisions I make, and not including yourself and Treasurer LaFata. And when, you know what, if I make a deal with this group, that action one, make a deal, I say no. That deal needs integrity, and that deal can never include an individual or a vendor. It must include a policy or a process for our township. It's that culture that must be changed. I will put the trajectory we're on and the supposed growing government. I am really looking forward to comparing budgets. The 2020 budget, this year's budget, compared to the budget that was led and given to me by the culture, the very culture that I'm trying to change. I've sat here, I've listened to it for, frankly, a year. The meetings speak for themselves. They're all recorded. The history's there. The issues are there. The Phragmites, very important issue. 2015, the board voted to enter into that contract. This board, the four of us that voted yes, simply voted to make sure next time we do it, we look at the mechanical option. That is what we could do as a township. But what did it do? It gets politicized. It gets turned into politics. So a politician is exactly what you are. Our next scheduled board meeting is November 19th at 7 p.m. Motion to adjourn by Trustee Demink, support by Clerk Berry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8.